for the thing. Thanks so much, Sarah, for agreeing to have an interview. I really appreciate it. How have you been?
Really well. Yeah, busy, which is good for a freelance person, isn't it?
It is. It's always a joy.
Just if you can say...
actually, it's not always a joy, actually, is it? Because you've probably got loads of deadlines.
Yeah. The deadlines are... I'm still the same way with deadlines as I was at school, which is leave everything to the last minute and then panic.
But that's kind of what they're for, aren't they, deadlines? I don't know, maybe, I don't know. How does it work with you when you say leaving everything to the last minute? And also with the deadline, actually, when I asked that, with the deadline, how much can you say about what you're working on? Is it something new? What are you currently doing? And you probably can't talk about it at all.
I can't talk about one thing because that's a secret at the moment. And I mean, I would love to blab every secret, but the TV companies that make it, they like to announce it themselves. So they make you stay completely stum until they announce it. So yes, I'm working on that. I'm working on an episode of Father Brown for the BBC, which is set in 1955. And I'm also writing an episode of Miss Scarlet and the Duke, which is set in 1888. So I'm bouncing back and forth between three timelines at the moment. So I'm in a Cotswold village in 1955, London in 1888, and somewhere else in the modern day.
How do you manage to do that? How do you manage to compartmentalize? Do you just have all your notes in front of you and think, right, and just get a laser focus, or how does it work? Do you kind of, you think, right, I'm doing a day on Father Brown, then I'm doing a day on Miss Scarlet, or I don't know.
Well, so they would never ever, I don't think anyone ever, Anna, has used the word laser focus and me in the same sentence. They're just, they're not phrases that go together. But no, I think the key is doing, you couldn't be, for example, at the beginning stages of all those things at the same time. I think you wouldn't have the bandwidth for that. So I think the idea, and that I think is true of all creativity, that you the beginning phase, which is certainly in writing and screenwriting, is the really, the torturous phase, where this is the phase where I always think, because it's, you're starting with a completely blank page. So I'm always thinking, I may come up with nothing for this. It may stay blank. There's always that fear. So, and then it's like, sometimes parts of it come really easily, and other parts, take ages to work out. At the moment with Father Brown, this is a kind of new kind of genre for me, because it's more of a kind of Agatha Christie style sort of mystery. So there's lots of clues, and it's very, very carefully plotted. So something like that, I mean, you'd struggle to come to work on that, the beginning stages, around anything else. So I think that's a very long-winded way, Anna, of saying
it isn't long-winded at all. Sort of,
if you get to the it's the first time ever anyone's ever said that to me either. I think the thing is that you you stagger everything. You stagger.
Right. Okay.
So you don't start everything at the same time. You look at your schedule and you say to the other show, I will be around this stage, so therefore I could start, because it's not easy going writing the actual script, but actually the really hard work is done at the beginning stages, where and obviously that goes to everyone. That goes to, you've got to please a lot of people. So firstly, you've got to please yourself. You've got to come up with something that you love and that you're happy to spend 3 months writing, and then you give it to the script editor. They have to like it. They give it to the producer. They have to like it. The exec, all the the TV company, the broadcaster, or the streamer, whoever's making it. So there's a lot of people, you know, and then later down the line there's the director, obviously the actors. There's a lot of people to please along the way. So yeah, the beginning are really hard.
I imagine, I suppose if you have, because you've worked on so many things. Now, looking at the list of the resume that you sent me on Instagram Messenger, thank you for that. But I imagine at the beginning, yes, absolutely, there are so many people to have to take into consideration. So what does actually happen? Having built up a track record, do they say, we like your style, we want it like this, and do they just give you the outline and you, or is there loads more that you're given right at the beginning to help you, to guide you in the writing process?
Well, that's a really good question. There are some shows, shows like you know, really long running shows like EastEnders, and the series with obviously very long running stories. They usually have a story department, and then they give you a lot of, you know, obviously because they need to know you know, what will be in each episode way in advance. But I don't tend to work on those shows. I think there's a real art to writing those shows, and I could never quite crack it. But you know, I mean, obviously making a living as a writer in this country is fantastic if you can be, you know, if you can work on those long running shows. I tend to work on shows where, you know, you will all sit down in what's called a writer's room at the beginning, with basically, so someone has to like your work. You generally have written original scripts, and they go to the producer, or they've seen your work on other shows, and they ask you to come in, and they see if you're a fit sort of personality wise for the room, because they want to look for different personalities around the table. And you know, and different demographics, and you know, different walks of life and experiences. So that's got to all gel, and then you will basically come in with an idea for your episode. So so if it's a particular crime, you know, you'll know that obviously the characters you're dealing with. You know, sometimes I've been on a show that has been literally at the start, so the characters are completely new, they haven't been on screen yet, but usually there's a pilot script that you can at least read to get some idea, but often you're just kind of working it out all together in the room, and then you pitch your story. And people throw in you know, questions and whatever. It's quite a, you know, nervy kind of process. But
so when
also,
you said you pitch your story, what do you mean by that? You pitch your stories as in you've done a provisional writing script. You've been given there's a pilot script that somebody else has done, and then you do your script and you pitch your script. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So
yes,
and you're and you're
spot on.
Right, and you're also saying that, for someone that doesn't know how it works at all, that people will do different episodes. Is that very common? That there might be about 4 or 5 writers and someone, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then
so the Mallorca Files, which
you just gone off then.
Sorry, yeah, the Mallorca Files, obviously.
I wonder why I can't hear you. Yeah, you just kind of tailed off. I don't know if it's because I'm on Bluetooth or whether it's because of the connection. Yeah, we met at we didn't meet actually, did we? We met at Steve's party. But yeah, it was a wonderful one to work on. I just, what happened with that?
Well, that's just been a wonderful experience, and hopefully, you know, it will be coming back soon. And I worked on that from the very beginning, you know, before like a year before it was even commissioned by the BBC, with Dan Sefton, who created it. And so you basically with that, you know, you come into a room and you just go, I'd really like to do something about where there's a murder at stag weekend, or I'd like to, you know, and then you loosely work out a story. You don't go too much into it at that stage, because they might go, nah, not interested in that, and then you've wasted your time. So yeah, and then obviously, because they've all got to fit together, the episodes, you'll usually have some discussion about how the characters will develop over the course of the series. And so then there'll be some rejigging, or, you know, and you'll look for, certainly on a show that involves murder, it's silly things like, we'll all sit and say, so how's your person going to be murdered? Is it going to be a gun? Is it going to be a knife? Is it going to be a wallop over the head? So that you don't have, like, you know, 3 gun murders in a row or whatever. So not every death is the same. So it's great to all be in the room. You have to come with your own game, you know, and then you will go away and write it, you know, over 3 months, various drafts.
I mean, it's interesting you should say that, because when I think about like a murder mystery, or that's the Mallorca Files is what would you call it? A drama? It's just kind of what format, what genre would you call it?
Yeah, I'd say it's a
detective
light
drama.
Crime drama. Detective drama, yeah.
So when you've got, well, whatever the genre is, what's the line between, maybe it's only on reflection, the line between a good idea and then just not falling into cliches? Because you said, oh, we can't have 3 murders and hitting over the head with this, and, you know, certain things. How do you kind of avoid that, or is there no way of avoiding it? Do you just have to write it out and think, oh no, I can't do that, that's just really been done too many times in that way?
Well, yeah, well, exactly. You know, that is always something in the back of your mind, and especially if you're going into a room with other writers who are of a really high caliber, you know, who you really respect. You don't want to be the one where they're all rolling their eyes going, oh my God, she's trying to pass that old hat off again, you know, as some kind of interesting new story. But at the same time, everything's been done, Anna. Absolutely, as we know, everything has been done. You know,
exactly.
how many songs have been written about love? So it's just finding a slightly different take on it. I mean, obviously, you know, that is the really hard thing, is coming up with something that's fresh, or a fresh angle. Sometimes it's just the genre, you know, it's doing something that you may have seen in a dark drama, but finding a lighter twist on it. And yeah, I mean, that's half the fun. And every single show you work on will have its own kind of USP, you know, unique selling point, where it's something very special to that show. Like on Mallorca Files, there's always some kind of chase, or you know, just, you know, banter, and rather than just looking for the crime, you're doing 2 things. You're looking for the crime, but you're also looking for character points along the way that will have them having banter together, and, you know, reveal a bit more of their characters. So yeah, every show is different, but yeah,
that definitely seemed to be
you always have to come.
You always have to come.
You always have to, come in with your own. Yeah,
you say that about Mallorca Files, and that is having. Well, I did the singing for both the theme music and that's our connection. That's how we know each other. Although we actually met through Steve. So, but as you said, with the Mallorca Files, having watched a few of them, it was definitely, so it wasn't the genre at all, which is well established, crime drama, detective drama. It was the USP was really the banter between them, wasn't it? The subtlety of the way that they were relating. And so what is that something that when you, from show to show, from program to program, emerges? Or is that something that you all have to sit around the table and think, right, this is going to be our USP? Because USP, I can imagine, I can imagine that could might feel forced, or sometimes with writing. How does that does it emerge basically, or does it develop, or do you have to have a strong idea? Probably a bit of both. I don't know.
But definitely a bit of both, and a lot. I mean, with the Mallorca Files, what was a completely new experience was that we watched the rushes every, you know, the filming every single day was sent to us from the very first episode, because we were still writing the show, So we very quickly got to see what the actors were doing with the material that they had, and we could then adjust. So that was really exciting, you know, sort of going, oh my God, you know, they're really funny when they do this, or they're really, you know, they handle this particular scene really, really well. So let's give them more of that. You're always, you know, obviously because you want the performances to shine. So you're always thinking of that, you know, and you know, and that's part of the, you know, if you're coming into a show that is already established, I mean, that's another skill set all of its own, which is obviously you're not there, you're bringing in your own characters for that episode, guest characters, but the ones that are there every week, the constant main characters, you've got to inhabit their voices, you know, you've got to, because people who are watching it every week, you know, they don't, you know, they want, you know, it's all got to be part of one big experience. So yeah, so you've got to do a bit of both. You've got to assimilate, but you've also got to invent.
That must be, well, that just takes a really experienced writer, clearly, because having to inhabit roles that are well established and to do that successfully, I can imagine being requiring a real kind of sense of, or just a lot of experience to be able to actually do that. And then also the actual creating the characters, which you've said. So presumably, is that one of the main reasons why when you're working on a new role that you just can't really do anything else, because you're having to establish the characters yourself? So there's that. And then how does that work? Do you have to go and do loads of research yourself? Or are you presented with loads of research? What happens?
Well, so it's a mix of both. So on most police shows you work on, and my first big experience of this was when I was a co-writer on the bill, and they had really, really strong links with the Met Police, and we had about 3 or 4 advisors on the bill who literally made everything, you know, went through everything with us, checking accuracy. I mean, obviously there was a certain amount of stuff you had to throw out to, you know, or compress in order to make the drama more exciting, you know, and you know, you couldn't have you know, three weeks for the DNA test to come back. You had to simplify, you know, and move that along a bit quicker. So most shows I've worked on hire in you know, ex-police officers, and then also on Father Brown, there is a fantastic, Jake is a fantastic researcher on the show who literally knows everything about the 1950s and anything. Like, I phoned him the other day to ask about poisons that were used in the 1950s, but very specific to, you know, that could be used in this way and might cause this reaction first. So specific, and he just went away and came back with things that would be available in the 1950s. And then Miss Scarlet in 1888 in London, you know, there's not necessarily an advisor on that show, but they do send everything off to be checked at the final stages, and you're kind of expected to do your own research as you go along, which is, for me, was a completely new experience because I hadn't written period drama before, and you know, you could go down rabbit holes. You know, I've been doing Victorian funerals at the moment, and just going down into, you know, rabbit holes of research for Victorian, you know, wedding practices and traditions and whatever, and it's just completely fascinating. And you can suddenly, you know, you've lost 2 days, but it really helps to know this stuff, and half of it you won't use, you know, probably more than half of it, but it's, yeah, you immerse yourself in the period and the you know, because that's what you need to do to get started, and often, you know, it will throw up story things that you hadn't even thought of, because you'll just go, oh my
when
God.
That happens. So when does that happen? Really? Does that happen with both of them? Yeah, when you've got an outline, you've got an idea, and then you've been deep in research and you think, oh no, I need to do this. This is going to be something for the future, or actually I'm going to change the whole thing. Has that happened with Father Brown and Miss Scarlet?
Yes, it has actually. Well, not moved away totally from the subject matter, but it certainly has. You thought the story would go in one way, and then actually, I mean, you know, it can obviously work in a negative way, where you've got a real idea about what you want to do. I mean, this used to always happen on medical shows, which is, I mainly do crime shows now rather than medicine. But when I worked in on medical shows, that was a complete annoyance all the time, is that I would come up with a story and then the medicine wouldn't fit it, and then I'd have to change. You know, you'd have to, so that was medicine. I always found quite a straight jacket. It was like, what comes first? You come up with the illness first and then kind of build some kind of human drama around it, or do you generally have an idea of a story you want to tell, and then, you know, you go to the medical advisors and say, what kind of illness would fit around this, and you know, provide these kind of plot points that I want to write about, but oftentimes they'd come back and go, no, you can't have that.
So you're saying saying historical drama is quite new for you, Sarah?
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Everything I've written up till now has been current day. Yeah. So only in the last, so I started writing period drama or period detective drama about 3 years ago. Yeah. So fairly recent.
So it's got these challenges that you've spoken about. Do you prefer it because you can get immersed and go down the rabbit hole, or would you rather? I'm just curious about what really stimulates you when you're writing, or are you just all for all of it? I mean, I could imagine it would be irresistible. Actually, I could see how it could be really fascinating doing historical drama, but then, like you said, there's all these other considerations. You've got to be so accurate with all the information because you don't want to get any of it wrong.
Well, absolutely, and also because, you know, Anna, you'll get, you know, so many people writing in going, I mean, you know, they've had this on Miss Scarlet, people writing in, you know, that show has amazing fans, but people write in and say things like, you know, they used this word and this word wasn't in common parlance until two months after this episode was set, or whatever. So people are really hot on this stuff. So yeah, you do want to get everything right. But I mean, this is what I tell you, what I found most fascinating is, obviously I've written crime drama for a long time now, and what you have when you write modern crime drama is obviously CCTV and DNA and you know, cell site analysis, you know, mobile phone data, all of that stuff, which, you know, means, you know, so many different routes of investigation and, you know, forensics. And, you know, and then suddenly you're writing a show like Miss Scarlet, where they didn't even have fingerprints yet. They weren't using fingerprints. So
right. I mean, I need to watch Miss Scarlet. Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, you should. It really is a wonderful show. It's called Miss Scarlet and the Duke. It's So with that, but then having said that, then it makes everything. So you're suddenly going, oh, I've got to do an investigation, but they're not even using the phone. You know, there's no mobiles, there's no
how anything. Did they ever find anybody? Even just things.
Well, exactly. I mean, this is why Jack the Ripper was never solved.
Well,
yeah.
So are you saying that they didn't really?
No. Well, you know, there's various ideas, aren't they? But no, you know, nothing definitive. But you know, I mean, when I'm writing Miss Scarlet and she hits on finds a particular clue and then needs to contact the police in a hurry, you go to write it and you're like, oh, okay, so what does she do now? She has to go out on the street, flag down a hansom cab, you know, get in the hansom cab, you know, on the horse-drawn carriage to the police station, and personally herself go. Meanwhile, you know, so keeping up the pace of the drama when you haven't got these shortcuts that you're used to, you know, say, you know, get here on the double. So all of that, and you know, not even having fingerprints or anything. I mean, it was just ridiculous things. Like I I had a
Well,
line
that
of
would it, because
dialogue.
that would all add a load of time onto your drama when you've got a particular length of time that the piece has got to be. You don't want to get it embroiled in. She went down 3 steps and then she turned, whatever. And
Exactly.
yeah, that must be
You
really
don't
hard actually, because
drama.
you're used to all the mod. Yeah.
Yeah, you used to like, oh yeah, you can just make anyone appear because you've got the communications to do it, which they didn't have. But I had this line in where Duke, the police detective, says, the prison that he's going to put this guy in is not like the Ritz. And then of course, I went back and checked, and the Ritz wasn't around in 1888. So, and it's just little things like that where you go, oh, I was just going to write that in just as a, fait accompli that was, and then you just think, oh, I ought to check that. Oh no, I can't use that because no one would have known what that meant.
Right, yeah. So you do double check everything. So hopefully it hasn't happened that often.
Yeah, only over 1 or 2 tiny things, but mainly I check everything before I hand it over.
Yeah, honestly. It's not, I suppose, well, it's fair enough. I mean, it's the kind of thing that it's like this sounds a bit snobby, but it would be a Channel 5 blooper program in about 5 years' time or something. When they pick up on is it in Congress? No, just basically where things aren't kind of stacking up. But it must be a little bit of a panic. But yeah, maybe it's not it must be something you try not to lose sleep over. Otherwise, you wouldn't do anything. But yeah, you just have to be very, very thorough. Presumably, you can't really leave any stone unturned when you're writing something. Well, it sounds brilliant. Are you preferring it, or have you got a preference with your writing? Because it's a new stuff. Well, you said for the last 3 years, it's not that new. But do you think you really want to continue on this, or is it just more really what comes up for you? And how does it come up for you? Is it through an agent, or was it because you're now pretty well established? Is it really that through friends and people that you know?
Well, so I have an agent, but obviously when my career sort of spanning over 20 years now, so you then have people that you've worked with in the past, and obviously you can't work on everything together, and you don't suit everything. I mean, there can be shows that you really like that you just go, I'm not a fit for that show.
Like what?
And so, well, oh God, what show? I mean, something like Game of Thrones, I could never imagine writing Game of Thrones or things like that. But, I really enjoy them. And, some of the fantasy stuff just wouldn't be my thing at all to write. But yeah, so work comes in 2 ways. So obviously your agent can put you up for stuff. Sometimes you'll see a show and think, God, I'd really love to write that. So you ask your agent to slip a script over to them, but generally what happens now is people just phone my agent, or sometimes phone me direct and say, people that I've worked with in the past, and say, would you like to come and work on this show?
So that's how it works. What would you say for people, because there are a few writers in this group, what would you say to people that are interested in doing more screenwriting? What would you recommend? I mean, I know, not dissimilar to music and any of the arts, over generations, over decades, the process of how you get into your particular area, it can change. It can be different from over the years. But what would you say people should? What is a good starting route for people? I mean, I remember when I was interviewing Steve, he said, because it used to be, I'd heard that, get a job as a runner. I mean, I'm not saying you should do that, but that was like something that people used to say like 20 years ago. And that was if you wanted to get into TV, but that was to work in TV. But as a writer, what would you say are the things that you presumably first and foremost be good at what you do? But then after that?
Well, I think, you need to write a spec script, an original script, and get it into the state, keep putting it away in a drawer for a bit and going back to it, just so that you've got that time to just, because obviously when you finish it, it's such an achievement. You're like, I want to send it out, but try and resist that, I would say. and then go back to it a few times and do a few drafts until you're really happy with it. And then it is more difficult now, because when I started out, you used to be able to send scripts in and they would sit on what you call a slush pile for ages. I mean, it would take ages for someone to read it, but people did read it even though you didn't have an agent or anything. Whereas now,
is that what you did right at the beginning?
Yes, I just sent stuff out. I mean, I literally could paper a wall. I was at university, and I could literally paper a whole wall with rejection letters before I and then the one that led to the job was actually a rejection letter as well. But it was just my boyfriend said, as he fished the letter out of the bin, he said, this is actually a really nice rejection letter. They've really taken the time. It was from the BBC. And so when I looked at it, I thought, yeah, no, it is she's really taken the time to say lots of positive things about my work. So I'll see if I can get a meeting with her. So I just literally, there was their email. Yeah. I might have just rung her and left a message and said, look, I'm not going to be a stalker, I promise, but I've just got this lovely letter from you. And I'd love to come to the BBC, and have a chat with you for 20 minutes, no pressure at all, but just have a chat. And then, that 20 minutes turned into, 45-minute chat. And then literally 2 months later, a slot opened up on a show that she was producing, and she got in touch with me. So I was already writing. Yeah, I had a writing job almost immediately after leaving university, which is really just freak luck. But I was sending a lot of stuff out for a long time before that happened. So anyway, this is a convoluted way of saying that although you could use to send it without an agent, more difficult now, because production companies tend to say they want agented stuff.
Right, they want it from the agent.
Now, once you've got, they want it from the agent because they're worried about being sued for, someone saying, you've stolen my idea or whatever. So they want everything to come through official channels now. But what there is are loads and loads of writing programs and competitions, and also things like the Writers Academy at the BBC Writers Room. BAFTA run a new showcase for new writers. So you can apply the Roadcliffe Writing Award, I think it's called. So there's lots of these things that you can apply for once your script's in really good shape, and then get onto these schemes that way. And then obviously once you do well in one of these competitions, you can then go to an agent and say, look, I've been in, even if you don't win it, I've been in the top 3 or whatever. And then you can sort of get that, sort of move that into representation, because they're always looking for, agents always say that they're busy, they're full, they can't possibly take on anyone else, but they're always looking for the fresh new talent.
That's brilliant advice. That's brilliant advice, because not dissimilar to the other arts, there are always competitions, there are always opportunities actually for you to, and you do have to be diligent, yes, but you do have to be tenacious as well, and determined, and keep sending stuff in. So doing the competitions, and also looking for opportunities where you can get something on your CV. But then also, brilliant story. Thanks for sharing that. That you did be prepared to send things off for quite a while, which is not uncommon at all in lots of different areas, and it can be something that really, when people get a couple of rejections, that really distinguishes people that do okay and that do actually get a foot in on the ladder, and people that don't. Because the people that do okay, I can remember, I think it was Gary Oldman as an actor saying, what he was asked the question, what distinguishes you at the beginning between you and your peers at the time? And he said, well, I think I was the only one that was just regular. Sorry, it's so boring, but I was the only one that kept writing the letters. I just just kept applying for things. I didn't stop. So being tenacity or just not the mundane, but the everyday action of being persistent and continuing. And also, as you said, perfecting your craft and keep getting it to a form that you really like, that you're happy with, and keep working on it. So that's all really brilliant. And what's next for you? What's kind of inspired, or what have you not done that that would really fire you up? I mean, from what you've said, that both of these historical dramas sound just amazing, and they're both on at the moment. Father Brown and Miss Scarlet. I need to watch both of them.
Yeah, so Father Brown, I think, will start in January, and Miss Scarlet, they're just about to release the series 3. But you can find that in this country. So it's for PBS Masterpiece in the States. It's also on Alibi here, and you can watch it on Now TV if you have the Now TV.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll have to look out for that.
Yeah, no, I think you'll really enjoy it, Anna. It's just really good fun. It's quite romantic as well. I'm a sucker for a bit of romance.
Well, I just loved it. Yeah, but so much. Next? Well, what's next that you think, oh, I've never done that. I'd love to have a go at doing that. Or are you I suppose historical drama, you said, for the last 3 years, because before that it wasn't something that you'd been doing. But is there anything else that you haven't done yet? Or have you done films? Have you done feature films, Sarah? Or is that a completely different thing? My career kind of that's how I got my first agent with a feature film that I wrote, and it was in development for a long time. It didn't get made. I think the thing is, do you know what? I think I would really like to write a film again. You get sucked into, the thing is about trying to make a living writing movies in this country is fairly impossible, because they take so long to get made. So I remember around, sort of the class asking, what everyone was going to do, or, what everyone wanted to write. And I said both film and TV. And, I think, if you want to make a living, then obviously, TV, it is much easier it's not easier, but there's just more work in TV. I think because I feel in a lucky position at the moment, or, I've paid my dues enough to where I can move between 1 or 2 shows. So if I can carve out some time to write a movie again, I think I will do that. Yes. Okay. Well, that's something that I want to watch more of what you've done in the Mallorca Files. As I said, that's how we know each other, and also through Steve. But I'm really fascinated to watch more of your series. And what else? I just wanted to ask you something else before we finish, but I can't remember what it was. Never mind.
Everyone loves your voice.
The Mallorca File. Oh, the Mallorca Files. Yeah. Well, I love doing it. It's brilliant. Yeah, well, Charlie is a brilliant writer. Of course, I know he's worked on all sorts of different things, and that was a really, really enjoyable afternoon where we recorded that. So it's great, and I know that there's a new season of that coming out pretty soon. And when I last saw you, I think it was I think we could say that, but then we couldn't say anything else. There's nothing else you can say about it because it's no secret.
It's all being planned, and it's all being planned.
Well, thanks so much, Sarah. It's absolutely fascinating. Someone that doesn't have any idea at all about the process of screenwriting and writing. And do you think a book would ever happen as well, or is that again completely different?
A book's a possibility, I think. Yeah, definitely.
Probably neither option is what you want to be thinking about right now, because you've got plenty on your plate. It's probably just like in a completely different orbit to consider. I've got loads to do with Father Brown and Miss Scarlet. So that's what people should look out for. And thanks, and really appreciate your advice for independent creators, because there are quite a few writers in this group, and it's always fascinating to hear what, especially someone that's established in the in the industry already to hear your advice. It's always really helpful to hear that. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, all the best with both of them.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye.